in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, everybody, how was the weekend? I hope it was good for you. I know that most of you out there did not get what you wanted as far as the Super Bowl was concerned. I just kind of look at it this way. I don't really give too much more of a damn about the Buffalo Bills nor the Washington Commanders. I guess new and fresh is always the rule, or most often it's always the rule. I don't mind watching a team go for some history and either make it or get shut down. And as I was talking to Jake, my whole point regarding Sirianni, I could be wrong because Sirianni was probably really good to these guys on their show, and I don't think I ever had him on. And oftentimes, my whole opinion on somebody is built on just how they act, and really it's built on, his Philly team beating the Colts here a couple of years ago after Frank Reich got fired, and then him acting like a jackass on the sideline in front of the crowd. But, hell, he was probably, in hindsight, he was probably more right than we are. It was a mess back then, and it's a stinking mess right now. You can't help but watch these teams, and I don't know if anybody else out there does this. I can't help myself. I can't help myself but to thrust the Colts into some of these situations and go, hey, I wonder if they were here and they were playing in a game of this magnitude under these circumstances in a similar situation, how they would respond. And it is so far from reality-based to me, you really can't come up with much of even a conclusion for the hell of it. Because it's so out there. You go, wait, there's no way. Like the one thing about the Kansas City Chiefs to me, and it goes without saying, Mahomes and his greatness, Andy Reid and his greatness, anybody that they factor through that lineup offensively ends up playing well. I dig it because Carson Steele from Center Grove is going to be a part of the Super Bowl as a rookie. That's pretty cool. I think that Tranquil kid's from Fort Wayne. That's great. But certainly Carson Steele. But anybody they put in offensively seems to fit and then seems to thrive. The thing that has to stand out to you is what their defense does. Because I never really drew a conclusion to how good their defense can be in moments of that magnitude, moments that really matter. We know about Chris Jones, but just seems like they always have other guys that step up. I saw Chris Jones make a comment saying, the only team that's ever going to beat us is going to be the team that has Steve Spagnuolo on the other sideline. He's talking about a team defensively that's going to be able to overcome what the Chiefs do offensively. And there's probably a lot to be said. So I'm not in love with them by any stretch. Like, I'm not thrilled, but I'm not automatically driven away because it's a Super Bowl of the Eagles and the Chiefs. I do find myself very interested. You know me. I like to make fun of NBA officials. I don't really make fun of a lot of other officials. There's been some, in the past, there have been some collegiate officials, some college officials in town, and I used to make fun of them, and I think they got mad. I think once upon a time, what's his name from Westfield, the NBA guy, got mad at me too. Tyler Ford. I don't know if he got mad at me, but I think he wanted me during the Pacer-Celtics series, the beginning of that, I think he wanted me to get up off of him a little bit. I wouldn't blame him. I probably was a jackass. I'm a real big jackass to NBA officials. It seems like kind of a group of like-minded individuals, and there's always seemingly an angle, and they're supposed to be, when I'm told that they're the best in the world, I give you a great example. On Saturday, the best in the world, these guys are the best in the world, and Zach Zarba misses an out-of-bounds call that literally is 2 inches off his nose. I go, wait a minute. Maybe these guys all the time are not the best in the world. But I make fun of NBA officials all the time. I kind of stay away from other avenues. I don't know, because it gets kind of tired blaming the officials. I guess that means I'm all grown up in sports, or kind of grown up in sports. But I don't make fun of them as much as I used to. But I can understand if you're watching the Chiefs, if one team gets the benefit of calls over and over and over again, that's how it's going to feel. And that's how it's going to be portrayed. Now, here's how I look at it. And I've said this before about the Chiefs. There'd be nothing better. And that's why I'm a little bit jealous. Like, normally Jimmy Cook sits here from noon until 3, but I think he had to party. He was over there yesterday at the toilet in Kansas City. I hate Arrowhead Stadium. Hate it. Nice people, except for the ones that threw ice balls at me. And hell, I didn't even have Colts gear on. I just had, like, North Face. I thought, wait a minute, why do you guys hate North Face so much? I mean, I know it's kind of douchey, but I had to stay warm. So, you know, you got Kansas City's biggest Central Indiana fan right here, and the Chiefs, that normally sits here from noon until 3. I get it when you grow up as a fan like that. I grew up as a fan as the Bears. I just kind of faded away from it. Once I started this job, I really did fade away from all fandom with the exception of Indiana State, where I went to college, Eastern Green, where I went to high school, and the Reds. And I know that they're always probably going to be sniffing somebody's rear end and not any good. Hopefully that changes sometime soon with Terry Francona, but you know what I mean. Clearly, all the goodwill with the Reds, it was exhausted in 75, 76, and in 1990 because it has been an absolute crap fest since. Anyway, 3 teams for the most part. So I look at a team like Kansas City, and I think about it from a standpoint of your favorite team, like Colts fans out there. Would there be anything greater, and you have felt this before, where your team is commonly hated by everybody just because they're good, just because they're successful, just because they're on all the stinking time. You went through it around here. Oh, man, another game with Peyton Manning. I'm sick of seeing Peyton Manning. He's everywhere, every commercial, SNL, all over the TV. Look at his forehead. Peyton Manning this and Peyton Manning that. You guys went through that era where everybody hated you or hated your favorite team. There is no better position in the world of sports to be for a fan that's favorite team has had a level of success where everybody hates you for really no good reason other than your success. Like, it's different with the Patriots. There are reasons. Belichick seemed like a very hateable dude. Tom Brady seemed like a very hateable dude. I'm not suggesting I hated them, but that's the way that it felt. There's no real reason why do you want to hate Andy Reid? Patrick Mahomes. So you get the same feeling, but I think a different set of circumstances altogether. So I kind of put it together that way of feeling like if I were a fan and my favorite team was hated that much by everybody because everybody was sick and tired of hearing about them and sick and tired of seeing them, that is the best position of all time to be a part of. And that's where Kansas City is. That is where the Chiefs are. Like, my favorite, if you're going to ask me, my favorite Chiefs era was Christian Okoye and Barry Word, the Nigerian Nightmare. And most of that was because I loved to play with Kansas City in Tecmo Bowl. True story. But I understand where you're kind of tired of it. The other side of it is you don't like Nick Sirianni, and I do understand that. But it does seem like that Kansas City gets every stinking call. I also remember another team that it seemed like got every single call, and that was IU. I think the only time I never really felt that way was 1992 and the national semifinal. It's like, wait a minute. Normally they get every call. Seems like they get every call. That's why Assembly Hall was dubbed the Hall of Calls by most. They always felt like you're going to end up getting a call. And I just think you get more calls when you have a high level of success. I just think it comes with the territory, right or wrong. Do I think that there's a big conspiracy? No, because there's not anybody out there that can keep a stinking secret for 5 minutes. Who among us can keep a secret anymore? Hell, I just had a secret. James knows this. He was just in here, right? We did the crossover, top of the hour. I was sworn to secrecy. You can't tell that. I blabbed to everybody in the studio during the break. Hell, I can't keep a secret either. I know you guys can't keep a secret. Nobody can keep a secret. There's too much recognition to be had. It's like a drug. Seriously. It's like we're George Young, and it's the late 1970s, early 80s, and we're dealing with Pablo Escobar. It is like cocaine, I would guess. Not that I would have any working knowledge of it. But it is like a drug. There's nobody that's going to be able to keep a secret. Can you imagine? Okay, here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to make sure that the Chiefs get every call, all the roughing penalties, a catch that is close to be deemed a non-catch is a catch. Let them line up offsides. Let them jump a little bit before the snap. And then we're going to lay on to the entire NFL universe that we can actually go ahead and administer a rule to which we award a score to a team, which yesterday in the NFC Championship game, I think shocked everybody. Hey, by the way, you scored. All right, we scored. Love it. So we can award a score, and then even if the play clock expires, I know that was pretty funny, pretty close right there. If the play clock expires, but it's just maybe a hair or a tick later, it's okay. Oh, no, by the way, too, we're going to spot by eyeballs. I mean, tennis and all these other sports, like tennis has this thing called Hawkeye, where I'm going to challenge this call. Is it in or is it out? And there's the tennis ball on the white line, either on it or part of it or a little bit of it or none of it. And the NFL has the biggest sports business in the universe, probably next to European soccer maybe. But you know what I mean. And you're having two old dudes run from the sideline trying to figure out in a mass of humanity exactly where to put the football down. All right. I will say this. I don't get as mad about it as everybody else because I do kind of – I think part of it is the conversation we end up having about that afterwards. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now. Our discussion on the Super Bowl, if you guys want to go there. IU basketball, I honestly don't know what else there is to say. Honestly, there's nothing else to say. It's like with the Colts. You know what needs to change, and if you refuse to change it, then what's going to happen? More of what we've witnessed, more of what we've seen, more of what you saw yesterday. So do you think all of a sudden the hump that is described by Mike Woodson is going to be overcome? I'm not suggesting they can't win a game here or there. They've got some talent on that team. It's completely unorganized, discombobulated, badly cobbled together talent, but there's talent. Those guys are talented. They're not talented at all at playing together. And their coach is not talented whatsoever at putting that talent in positions to thrive and play better. That would be the facts. That's the facts. There's no opinion. There's nothing opinion-based about it. All you have to do is watch some of this crap with the analytics and all the nerdery and the social media. That is going to hit you over the head, and it's going to become a virus for you. Don't let it. All you have to do is watch. It doesn't work. It doesn't work to the standards that anybody would expect. It's like the Colts. It doesn't work to the standards in which you expect. And they're going to live with it for another year and see if that tide will turn. IU, after this season, can't afford to do the same. I mean, you talk about some out of sight, out of mind stuff. You talk about it getting overcome by your football program. I mean, hell, maybe Kurt Cignetti and IU football is going to be anywhere near that level of expectation, one and done. But you could tell yesterday they walked in the building and everybody got excited like Bob Knight and his basketball team would have walked in the building back in 1987, back in 1992, 93. It was rock star status when they walked in. But again, these aren't analytics or numbers or mathematics that a bunch of nerds put together and say, well, you know what, this is why this is not going to work. I can tell you this right now. No, you just have to watch. You have to watch. You have to watch the end of the game. All right, the fouling thing, whatever. If they were told to foul and they didn't, that's on them. But that is a part of the discombobulation. That is a part of the lack of understanding. That is a part of the lack of being able to, you've seen so many different times. The golden era of IU basketball, everybody would always seem to know what they were supposed to do. Players of that particular era tell me they always knew what to do. They'd always been informed what to do. I'm not suggesting they don't have talent, and sometimes maybe you end up going out on your own, making a play on your own. But these guys have zero recognition. Who's the shooter? Who's the hot shooter? Who's the guy you have to close out on? Who's the guy where you can go under the screen? Who's the guy where you absolutely have to go over the screen? Who can score better with the right hand? Who scores better going over their right shoulder, over their left shoulder? And it never seems to work out. They always get burnt by the same things. Like the same things in these scouting reports that you see before the games that a lot of these dorks put out. They end up getting beat like that. And it's really like the Colts when everybody says, yeah, you guys need a tight end. Yeah, no, we don't. Yeah, you do. You guys need a corner. No, we don't. Yeah, you do. You can't have the fan base continuously be accurate about something you're supposed to be accurate about all the time. Your profession. It can't happen. And it happens way too much with both. It is all too familiar. And I know people are going to say, what are you doing dragging the Colts into this? This is a comparison of both right now, where you continue to go down a path where we have been there, we have done it, we have seen the outcome, there is evidence, but you continue to do it for what reason? Now, what evidence do you have that leads you to believe that things are going to change? So, you look at Maryland yesterday, you go back to Northwestern on Wednesday. And now you got, 4 or 5 games coming up, beginning on the road at Purdue. I look at those guys, and I do think that they're talented. Sometimes you wish that a couple of them had a little bit more want to. I think a couple of those dudes easily go away. I think Mbako easily goes away. I think Mbako's talented, but I think you see the difference as to why he wouldn't be getting clock at Duke, whereas he's playing here. Because when the going gets tough, he's going to get going. That can't be you. And that cannot be an identifier of your program. You know, the numbers that Ballo puts up, the double-doubles and all this, and that's fine, but there are other moments when my man is just walking. That's one thing you really can't do. Because you can't fool. There may be some fools out there that are fans, but you can't fool a lot of these people because they've watched basketball longer than you've been alive. And they know when something's being half-assed. I just think at times if you don't have talent, you absolutely have to show effort. But it is the best, and it's always kind of felt like in the past that IU was identified with guys that made the most out of themselves. These guys are talented dudes, but they don't get the most out of themselves. And that's what this program is. And I thought yesterday, that's what you witnessed, and especially down the stretch. As far as the handshake or whatever. But you've kind of seen enough at this point, right? I don't think anybody would counter that. So I'll make the comparison between that and Colts football. There is zero evidence right now that the crossing the fingers and the hope that you have will change. We can discuss that at 239-1070. Pacers get a win. That keeps me from going absolutely 8-blank. Today is Saturday. See, this is what happens. You didn't see a lot of giggling and laughing from the Spurs in the second half on Saturday, did you? I love it when a team that claims to be full court energetically uses that to their advantage, man. A lot of pick 'em up full court. I was digging it. Everybody out there wants to play that way. There's every basketball player in the world will tell you, man, I want to play up and down. Let's get that tempo going. Let's play fast. And everybody wants to do it until you have to do it. And it's different. Believe me, it is different. Pacers are capable on both ends of handling that. Here's the other thing I don't understand. Actually, two things I don't understand. We'll take it to a break, and Lance McAllister is going to join us coming up at the bottom of the hour regarding the Bengals' old defensive coordinator and the Colts' new defensive coordinator. That and a lot more with Lance, bottom of the hour. I don't get why anybody suggests the Pacers have to trade Miles. I don't know why the Pacers would even think about trading Miles. I'm not going to place them in the category of stupid that some folks out there are. Like, I'm going to put Kevin and Chad and Rick in a different category. They're not in the stupid category. They're not, hey, we got to make a deal because $30 million, the cap is going to go up, and you can figure this out. And he is essential personnel. He's not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but he is good for this team. He will always be good for this team. And if you fail to recognize that, that's your fault because you probably are a bit of a dumbass. And that's okay because we have dumbasses out there. I just sit here and tell you there's no way in the world that the Pacers are dumbass like that. None. So you don't have to. Why would you even think about it? And holy hell, dudes. Rule number one for us dudes. James, really quick. Rule number one. Now, if I ever poke fun at you, it's about your man bun.
Yes.
Your man bun.
Yeah.
Have I ever made fun of what you're wearing?
No.
Have I ever? All right. Dudes, I have never cared 1 ounce in my life what another dude was wearing. Not in my life. Not in my existence. Not once. Now, do I like old school uniforms? I do. But this is different. Like in 2 games, when you do a walk-up wearing whatever you're wearing, right? Like if I were doing a walk-up over there in Paris, James, I probably would have parachute pants on, something that I just had purchased from Chess King in 1983. They didn't. They wore all this outlandish. All right. It may not be for me. It may not be for you. But, man, I don't care. And you shouldn't either. Dudes, don't care about what other dudes are wearing. Don't. It's weird. I get so much. I can't believe. Can you believe what they're wearing? I can't believe. Like somebody had sent me something where these guys had a podcast. You should trade Miles for what he was wearing. What kind of dumbass are you? And why are you judging what another man is wearing? What is wrong with you? You're not Calvin Klein. I flat guarantee that. So don't. All right, James, I'll break. Lance McAllister on the other side. JJ's good. today? Have we heard? 4 o'clock for JJ, Stephen Holder in the 5 o'clock hour. A lot of yous and a lot of me's today. We got 2 opportunities to be out with us later on this week. I cannot wait for that, too. In studio with James, I'm John. Anything to give away? Oh, thumbs up. We got stuff to give away. James,
We
tell
got
us.
Simple Minds tickets.
Whoa, wait a minute. The show of the summertime, Simple Minds, Soft Cell. By the way, James, Soft Cell has one of the great songs of all time. You know what it's called?
Not a clue.
Well, it's Tainted Love. You know that song, right?
Oh, yeah,
Tainted
I know
Love.
that song.
Do you know the song Sex Dwarf? That's really good.
No, but I feel like I need to hear it now.
Sex Dwarf. The great Mark Allman and Soft Cell, along with Modern English. Tickets to give away for that a little bit later on. Do not go anywhere. The stream, the app, HD Radio, and Lance McAllister from Cincinnati on the other side. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
the hell's in there, but it's weird and pissed off, whatever it is.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Yeah, busy week. Tom's Watch Bar Wednesday. Pacers back at home after being in France last week. At the Pistons on Wednesday night. Workingman's Friend, the legendary Workingman's Friend, that's a tavern tour stop with Heaven Hill Distillery coming up on Friday. So all of you are invited to attend. I'm assuming the girls will be there, so it's going to be a blast. Friday, Workingman's Friend, tavern tour stop, Heaven Hill Distillery. You know what I mean. No need to RSVP. Just have your ass there, and we'll have a good time. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline from Cincinnati, here's our good friend, 700 WLW. Class of 1984, Carmel High School. Class of 1988 from Butler. He is Lance McAllister, who joins us now. Big fella, how's it going?
Go Greyhounds, go Bulldogs. Good afternoon. Good to hear from you, JMV.
Right back at you. How are things going in the Queen City? You got everything worked out? Have you been to Jungle Gyms recently?
That's all. You know what? I love that place because
Yes.
I always, if you don't have a plan, good luck. But even if you have a plan, the number of times I've gotten lost in there and I had to ask somebody, how do I get out?
Yes.
People don't understand that until they've been there. It is fantastic, but it's very confusing at times.
I love Jungle Gyms. In fact, I just cracked open yesterday, Lance, a package, and it's great. It is raw crawfish tail meat.
Oh.
And it is some good stuff, buddy. Let me tell you that. Quality.
You know, the last time we were there in the seafood section, they had a big tub of ice, and sitting in the middle of the ice was a shark head.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's all, just the head of the shark.
See, I want to go to Jungle Gyms right now, and I've passed along that generationally. My kids love Jungle Gyms, too.
It is perfect for the Super Bowl as it approaches. Nothing better than stocking up and planning prior to the Super Bowl by going to Jungle Gyms.
Do you think the Chiefs get calls from the officiating?
I don't buy into the conspiracy theories as deeply as others. It's frustrating to me to see how damn good they are at creating breaks and taking advantage of opportunities. And I think it's, to use a word, I think it's obnoxious. They've won 17 straight one-possession games. I mean, nobody should be able to do that. And yet, I kind of equate them to, from a Cincinnati mentality, like the Cardinals and the Steelers.
Yeah.
Can't stand them, but have to respect the hell out of them.
Yeah, I look at it this way, too. I'm so jealous because the rest of the world hates them because of their high level of consistent success. Thus, the rest of the world would like to be them, and that's where we are.
Yep.
It's Lance McAllister with us. Lou Anarumo, what are the Colts getting in a defensive coordinator that clearly was not good enough in Cincinnati at the tail end?
I will tell you up front, I'm a big Lou Anarumo guy. I think what happened was inevitable. I think he became a victim of circumstances. The reality is, when you have Joe Burrow puts up MVP-type numbers and Jamar Chase wins the Triple Crown and Trey Hendrickson leads the league in sacks and you miss the playoffs, somebody's got to take the fall for that. And I know that sounds very scapegoatish-like, but there was an element of Lou becoming a scapegoat to some extent for this team. And I understand 6 years is a long time in the coaching cycle for the voice and the vision and the eyes to be the same. So I get that they had to move on. I root for him, and I think he will do well in Indy. Let's remember, you go back 3 years ago, he was one of the hottest commodities there was among defensive coordinators. He was coming off the Super Bowl appearance and then an AFC Championship game. He had befuddled Patrick Mahomes. He had befuddled Josh Allen. And then Jesse Bates left in free agency, and then DJ Reader left in free agency. And I think a lot of fans looked around and said, well, what the hell do you want Lou Anarumo to do if you took two of his core pieces, two of his leaders? And I think that's very fair. They took a talent drain on that side of the ball.
What is the essential positional type of personnel that's necessary for him to thrive here? Sooner rather than later, Lance.
Yeah, I think the one thing I always pointed to with Lou from a negative or concern, he tended to be complicated in what he did. And at times I thought overly complicated. So it almost slowed players down. I was struck by what Al Golden said today at his introductory news conference, the new Bengals DC, who comes from Notre Dame, of course. And Al used two lines that I highlighted. He said, I want to quiet my player's mind, and I want a stimulus response. meaning just play, don't think, play fast. And I think at times, and the Bengals won their final 5 of the season after a disastrous game against Pittsburgh. And I think a lot of people, and in fact, I asked Lou, and I wasn't the only one. People were saying, did you simplify this thing? And he kind of hemmed and hawed, and you could tell he didn't want to give into that because I think he wanted the backs of his players, not like he didn't want it to sound like he had to dumb it down for his guys. But I think to some extent, Lou was the mad scientist. That's the word we always used, and I think some of that was maybe too much time spent in the lab creating things that took a lot of time for guys to figure out and then think about on the fly during a game.
Did he have to go there? Would you have been satisfied had they brought him back, or was this a parting of the ways that was necessary, Lance?
I think it reached the point where they had to move on from him just for the sake of a different voice and a different way of doing things. The week 14, I think it was week 14 against the Steelers, Russell Wilson torched them for 414 yards. Russell Wilson threw for 414 yards. It's the most a Steeler quarterback had ever thrown for against the Bengals. And they lost, the Bengals lost to him 44-38. They put up 520 yards of total offense. And you just felt at that game, that was like the breaking point of there's no way Lou's going to be able to survive this, whether it's completely his fault or not. They did reel off their final 5 in the win column, but it was just too late. I mean, make no mistake, guys respected Lou. They loved Lou. He's a very brutally honest guy. He's a no-nonsense guy. There's also like a very like humorous side. He would join us every week for a show we call Bengals Line on Monday nights. And whenever he would join us, whenever you brought up something positive, he would always reach down to the side of his chair and he would knock on wood because he's very superstitious. Like every time he said something was going well, he would knock on the side of his chair with a smile like, don't jinx it. And I have the ultimate respect for the guy. I just think it had to change here after 6 years for a different way of doing things. I mean, in the end, this team lost 3 games this year where they scored a combined 99 points. They scored 99 in 3 games, went 0-3 in those because of the defense. And clearly everybody said, what are you doing to Joe Burrow on the other side of the ball? You got to be better.
Is Al Golden, is he the solution here? Are they that close to being back again, and it just takes a defensive coordinator, a different defensive coordinator?
No, 2 things. I think it takes a different defensive coordinator, and I love Al Golden, the hiring of Al Golden. He knows this organization. He said today it lets him skip a lot of the steps of learning around here. He knows a lot of the players on the team, but the reality is they need more talent. They had 1 pass rusher. The most amazing thing in Trey Hendrickson recording 17.5 sacks is he had no threat helping him on the other side. And how he did it, I still don't know. But your stat of the day would be this. Over the last 4 years, they've used 9 draft picks on guys who were taken in the top 100. 9 picks in the top 100, and they've gotten very little out of those. And some of that has to be on Lou not developing guys. The coaches play a big role here in scouting. The Bengals the Bengals have the smallest scouting staff in the entire league. They tell their coaches, we want you involved in this. So Lou can't wash his hands from that. But there just wasn't their first-round pick last year. Miles Murphy didn't have a sack 2 years ago. Didn't have a sack this year in his second year. So it was very fair to say, where is the development going on here on that side of the ball? And it really wasn't. And they believe that Al Golden and what he did and what he coached up at Notre Dame with some more talent infused will be a difference going forward for this team.
All right. I would expect the Reds need, Lance, more talent infused, maybe a little bit more offense, more bats here. But what's Terry Francona going to do for this franchise?
Well, this drives me crazy because my biggest fear from day one, I said the other night, if I were doing a manager draft, I think I'd take Terry Francona number 1. But my fear is this organization was going to sit back. They were going to scapegoat David Bell. They were going to say, hey, here's Terry Francona. We'll be healthy and our young guys will be better, and that would be about it. And look, individually, I like the fact they added Brady Singer. Individually, I like the fact they added a backup catcher who's a Gold Glover and Jose Trevino. And individually, I like Gavin Lux being added. But in the big picture of all this, it's still not enough. We've known in this city for 2 years they needed a bat with a presence in the order. Nick Kroll said at the start of this offseason they needed a bat in the order. Well, we're sitting here today on January the 20th, and they still don't hit 27th. They still don't have that bat. And there's questions at first, there's questions at third, there's questions in right, and that's not even addressing the cross your fingers that Matt McClain is going to be healthy at short and other aspects of this team. I think they'll be better, but they're just it's I keep saying this like I'm blue in the face. It's just not enough. They need to do more, and they may still make a trade. I think in terms of dollars and cents of free agency, I think if they're going to go that route, if they scrape through the couch cushions and try to scrounge up some dollars and cents, maybe somebody like a Randall Grichuk on a 1-year prove it to us deal. They always do those type of deals. It's like the Ryan Ludwig theory of Reds baseball, and it drives me crazy because they need a bat in the outfield. But I'm holding out hope between now and opening day, which is 59 days away. They still do something.
Is this ownership or is this Nick Kroll?
Yeah.
It's just
no. This is and as much as Nick Kroll at times has the personality of like a doorknob. He's not a very fiery, invigorating guy who inspires a lot of people. But I think he knows baseball. But he's also been giving the marching orders of you can spend this amount of money. And he's probably looked at his roster and said, well, based on the amount of money I have, I don't have very much left here. What do you expect me to do? And fans go after Nick. I think he's of reasonable baseball intelligence and knows that if he had some money, he could be a bigger player in the game right now. So, that's this ownership group. I have said for years, the value of this franchise has so blossomed exponentially. I just wish for once they would say to like the other 15 minority owners, hey guys, we're making you a buttload of money. We're going to do a cash call here. We need a little bit of money infused into this. For one off season, we need to add a bat. Everybody's going to have to kick in a little bit of money, and I'll catch you on the back end because we're going to make it. Because if we make this move, we'll be better, and our fans are going to believe, and they're going to buy tickets, and we're going to win. And they just refuse to do that. If I hear them say one more time, well, we just try to break even. The value of the franchise triples and quadruples. They get away with saying, well, we're just trying to break even.
Yeah, that's some loser mentality right there for real. Really quickly, Lance McAllister, before I let you go, you mentioned Matt McClain, his health, and expectations to raise the bar on Ellie. What are you thinking?
I think Matt McClain, the scary thing is, on opening day, he will play in his first regular season game in 527 days. 527 days. He got hurt in like August 2 years ago and hasn't played a regular season game since. If he's healthy, he's a difference maker in this lineup. Ellie, to use a cliche, the sky is the limit. That dude, I've never, I go back to Eric Davis and beyond with this franchise, but the beauty of Ellie De La Cruz is you don't know what he's going to do, and he's capable of anything. Nothing would amaze you. Nothing would startle you. You just say, "Oh, that's Ellie being Ellie," and I think he's going to be even better this year, and I think the rest of the National League better look out.
Yeah, it's Lance McAllister, Reds Bengals show 700 WLW local product from Carmel High School, the class of 1984. What was your prom song at Carmel in '84?
I don't know if I'm prepared to admit this, but I guess I will. I did not go to prom.
Okay.
I went out prom night. I'm not going to tell you who I went out with. No, I had a date on prom night. But I will not reveal publicly who that was with.
Okay.
That makes it sound like ominous and weird. Yeah. I don't mean it that way. So we should have ended this like.
I'm sorry. I said one final question and I took it too long. My brother, we'll stay in touch over there. I always enjoy having you on, man.
You're the man. I always enjoy it. Thanks for asking.
So Lance McAllister of 700 WLW on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. JJ, top of the hour. Stephen Holder coming up at the 5 o'clock hour. Podcast it up. Road shows Wednesday and Thursday. Explanation for that is stuff to give away. Don't go anywhere. It's 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
And the words you just said.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, Les McAllister, 700 WLW. Lou Anarumo and a little Reds conversation right there for you, Reds fans. Caravan blew through Speedway, I think, last week. It was down in Bloomington last week as well. And they continue moving forward. And they'll get things started coming up, and I think about a month or less than a month right now, too, with pitchers and catchers in Arizona. And we're not going to be too far away from things officially starting once again. Lance McAllister Podcast 107.5, thefan.com. Yeah, I was looking at this a little bit earlier. The McDonald's All-American team. There's Braylon Mullins, Greenfield Central High School, going to UConn. Jalen Harrelson, La Lemire, formerly of Fishers, and they're doing just fine without him, by the way. Jalen's going to Notre Dame. And is there one more on here? What else we got? Darius Adams is a La Lemire guy, too. He's going to UConn. The McDonald's All-American team in the East, the schools it represents, not that you really care about this, Cincinnati, Arkansas, UConn, undecided, Duke, Notre Dame, Houston, Michigan, Kentucky, UConn, and UConn. Who's Dusty have here? Trey McKinney, 6'4" forward. Out west, undecided Louisville, Washington, undecided Houston, BYU, Duke, undecided Kansas, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Baylor for those McDonald's All-Americans out west. Jimmy Johnson says, tell James he loved the Iron Maiden re-entry right there. Was that from Number of the Beast?
That was, what was that song? I believe that was The Trooper that I just played.
The Trooper.
Yep.
Have you played Run to the Hills before?
I think I have.
Yeah. Iron Maiden. There was no concert shirt that was more valued or more often worn in the 1980s than an Iron Maiden concert shirt.
Really?
Yeah.
Good to
People
know.
loved them. Yeah. Because, that was back when you had the true album art, too.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the album art was worth something back then. Thank you, Jimmy, for that. Quick break, we'll come back. JJ was not in France. He was closer to Paris, Illinois. But we'll talk about those two games in Paris Thursday and Saturday, a two-game split for the Pacers and the Spurs, and the preparation for Detroit coming to town on Wednesday, too. And we'll address some of these ridiculous Miles Turner trade rumors. Why in the world would you want that? Like, there was one, FanDuel had the one with Hachimura and a couple of other jacksticks from the Lakers. And I mean, what? What is wrong with you people? Seriously, what is wrong with you people? We'll talk about that and more with JJ, Stephen Holder after 5. Why you really dislike the Chiefs and more coming up in hour number 2. Don't go anywhere.
with JMV.
Ahoy, Ploy.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
The late Shannon Hoon. What, did he go to McCutcheon High School? That's where Shannon Hoon? McCutcheon?
I have no idea.
Bill Bailey attended Lafayette Jeff for a while, not the entire way. You know who Bill Bailey is?
I've heard the name. I don't know if I could tell you exactly what he's from.
A rock music lead singer of high fame.
Is it a band that I should know?
Yeah. Not like Lamb of God or Pantera or
I figured it
Dimebag
wasn't one of
Dude,
them.
whatever, but yeah. Axl Rose.
Really?
Yes. He had I swear to God, either a brother or a cousin that used to call, when I first started, not at this particular station, at the other station, called me all the time and talked about him. Bill Bailey, I believe that is. Axl Rose.
Well, his name is William Bruce Rose, not Bill Bailey.
Really? I thought it
Yeah.
was Bill Bailey.
No,
Really?
not according to Wikipedia.
Well, I don't know about that. Bill Bailey.
Also known as William Bruce Bailey.
Thank
Bill
you
Bailey.
very
Okay,
much,
But I guess his
Bill
real name is
Bailey.
William Bruce Rose.
I always thought Shannon Hoon was from McCutcheon. And isn't Duff McKagan from up there too?
Maybe.
From Lafayette?
Shannon Hoon is from Lafayette, yeah.
I thought Shannon Hoon went to McCutcheon and then Duff McKagan was from Lafayette as well, part of Guns N' Roses. See what you learn on this show, James? We just get through it, learn on the fly. Go ahead.
Duff McKagan, he was born in Seattle. It
No,
says.
okay. Who was the guy I'm searching for then? Who was from Lafayette? There's somebody else from Lafayette.
I mean, Axl Rose, I thought was.
yeah,
from
I know
Lafayette.
he is. Skivvy says, last night we watched Jesse Eisenberg's new movie, A Real Pain. He was wearing an IU hat throughout. Turns out, did you know he lived in Bloomington for a spell, that his wife is from there? I know he showed up at a Pacer game years ago, did he not? And sat on the baseline because he was good friends. Now, this is going to require some really good memory, and our next guest would probably know that. Good friends with Andre Drummond, the center, who is still in the NBA. Yes, James?
I believe you were thinking of Izzy Stradlin.
Yes, that's who I'm thinking of. I always get he and Duff McKagan messed up. Izzy Stradlin is from Lafayette. Duff McKagan's from Seattle. Thank you, James. Andy Moore, Automotive Group Hotline from Pacer TV. Jeremiah Johnson joins us. Do you remember that time when Jesse Eisenberg was on the sideline, on the baseline for a Pacer game at the Fieldhouse?
I do. Yeah, I do remember that. I actually did a sideline interview with him.
There we go.
I think he was dating someone that went to IU or lived in Bloomington, or maybe he was for a short time living down there. I don't remember all of the details. It's a little fuzzy right now, but yes, that was one of those rare courtside appearances. And
I thought he was friends with Andre Drummond. I thought they were friends, but, IU chicks are notoriously smoke, so that'd be pretty smart, too. I'm just curious. But I thought that he was friends with Andre Drummond as well.
It could have been, but I do know that he at least had a place or was spending a lot of time in Bloomington. So I don't know, how the schedule's all lined out.
Nothing will do that to you like a little bit of Strange right there, will it, JJ? Come on now. I think I'll spend a lot of time in Bloomington. All right. There's a reason behind it.
Dagwoods. He just wanted to be at Dagwoods on a regular basis, and so decided to get a place in Bloomington.
I love I will say this about Dagwoods. And this is just the old school in me, and we all know that I'm very old school. Going down the stairs to the basement Dagwoods will always be the best. Always. So
No arguments here, especially if you could play a little Donkey Kong, right?
Oh, cocktail table Donkey Kong waiting for them to make my sandwich was just awesome. God, man, it's a great recall.
The Dagwood Supreme at the downstairs version just tasted a little bit better than the current modern version. But I'll still consume when I'm down there. And I don't know, there was one in Broad Ripple for a short time when I was living over by Butler that didn't last as long as I thought it would. That I would still go over there and get the Dagwood Supreme. So I don't know if there is any others outside of Bloomington right now or not.
Yeah, there was just something about walking down those stairs into the basement of the old school Dagwoods that just made it different for me.
It's been a while since we did that.
It absolutely has. Jeremiah Johnson was closer to Paris, Illinois than he was to Paris, France, Thursday and Saturday. Thursday, that was a good thing because I was all pissy on Friday, by the way. But I felt much better after Saturday's game, and they evened things up. What stands out to you about that? We were talking about the defense, and then obviously they gave up a $140 on Thursday, and that was awful. And the Spurs were laughing and giggling and dunking and laying it up, and it looked like, some kind of preseason jack-around game. I didn't like that. But the Pacers responded about as well as you could ask for them to respond, I thought, on Saturday.
They did. Going into that trip, John, I was a little concerned just the momentum that they had. They were playing so well for an extended period of time, and they had a little bit of a routine going where they were basically playing every other day. And you have this break to the schedule. You have family with you in Paris. You have everything else going on, and you still have to try to pick up where you left off when the ball is thrown into the air, and they just weren't able to do that. And I know you were concerned. I got your message. I didn't know what to say to you other than let's wait and see what happens on Saturday. And on Saturday, you did see the response that you were looking for. I'm sure it was part of the game plan to avoid going at Wemby and limit his effectiveness on the other end, but it just felt like there was a stretch of that first time that they played where they were challenging him a little bit too much. I would say there's 5 players on the floor, and you want to go at anyone else. So if he's on one side of the floor, you want to go at the other side. Now, you can't just change everything you're doing due to one player, but if anybody makes you change or alter your approach, it's probably him, especially with the way he was playing. And you knew that some of those other Spurs wouldn't hit shots at the 50% clip that they did on Thursday, do that on Saturday. Champagne's from France, right? So I said that on Thursday. Hopefully they'll have a little too much champagne on Friday, and you can get them on Saturday. And the Pacers, they got him on Saturday.
It's Jeremiah Johnson, Pacers Television, Pacers Detroit coming up on Wednesday. We'll get to that matchup. That's a rematch of sorts with a little bit outside of what your normal basketball on a Wednesday should be. We'll discuss coming up in a second. I may be wrong about this, and I'm sure that I am, because that's a hell of a pace to keep up the entire year. I wish they would do more of taking guys away or trying to take teams out of their ordinary by playing full court. I think most of the time when I see them doing that, it works to their advantage. They don't do it all the time. I understand why you don't do it all the time. I guess I just find myself wishing they would do it more. How about you?
They're probably doing it more than you even think. I mean, sometimes it's just meant to slow the game down a little bit. You notice it when they get a steal or, maybe McConnell comes in and does something. And we're seeing other players on the Pacers, not just T.J. McConnell getting steals full court off the inbounds pass. So I agree with you. You want more, but you got to be a little bit cautious, and maybe sometimes you spring a surprise, and that's where you can really make an impact there. But what we've discussed on this program, I think, before is that just making it difficult to get to half court, and instead of it being 17 or 18 seconds where you're starting your offense, if you can get them to not even get into their motion or their sets at 13 or 14, they just don't have as much time then. Before too long, you look up and it's 5 or 6 on the clock, and you've got to go isolation ball. And so that really helps the Pacers. They're built to be able to do that because of their depth. And one of the things during that run to the Eastern Conference Finals last season, they were a little bit counter to what normal teams or most teams do in the NBA in shortening rotations. They didn't really do that. And most people would say, well, you can't do that and win in the playoffs. But the reason you could do it is everyone that is out there plays absolutely as hard as they can for the time they're on the court, and then you need a break, and you need the other guys to be able to fill in. And that's another reason why complete health is going to be the biggest thing, I think, watching over the second half or this last 2 or 3 months of the regular season is if they can maintain a relatively clean injury report, it then will allow them to play that full court pressure defense that you speak of that you don't see. And so it's fun to be a matchup problem or play the kind of style that an opponent just is not prepared for. It's a little bit like back in the day when teams had to play against Jim Boeheim's zone defense, right? They weren't ready for it. They caused them problems. Not many NBA teams have to prepare for the full court press, and so it does cause them problems when they play the Pacers.
Well, it's very much the same. I bring this up all the time. Everybody in the world that plays basketball always says, I want to play fast. I want to play at a high tempo. And some are good at it, but some aren't. I mean, you really want to do it until you have to do it, and then sometimes it doesn't work. And that's very, I think, similar to that of the zone that you were talking about, teams playing against zones. Back in the day, it was like, oh, wow, a zone, I get to rest here, and I'll just shoot a couple outside shots and loosen things up on offense, and it'll be easy to perform. But, some zones are a little bit different. I will ask you this, though. You look at the rotation right now. There was like a 2-week span where Jarris Walker was playing really well, and you thought, look at the evolution. We're watching it right now. And then he got, 5 minutes, I think, on Saturday in that win over San Antonio. Where is he as far as rotationally speaking right now with this Pacer team, JJ?
The important thing is he's in his second NBA season. So as long as he does not overreact or get upset with the situation. And to me, as long as the communication is good, and if I'm watching during games, which, I'll be doing over the next month, I'll be kind of paying attention to mood and demeanor on the bench. As long as he has the right approach to it and knows his time will come, I think it can all work itself out. Now, there are going to be people who are going to be concerned and say, you've got to develop him. He's one of your key players, a guy that has a higher ceiling than maybe some other players on the team. What I also think you'll see, Ben Shepherd is a very dependable player, but there may be nights that Jarris Walker comes in off the bench in that position, and maybe Ben Shepherd doesn't get the minutes. I'm not saying that it's going to happen on Wednesday or any specific game, but Rick Carlisle has mentioned he's going to be communicating frequently with these guys to let them know the situation before games, and also it'll be the group that gives them the best chance to win. And I think moving forward, there are going to be games where Jarris Walker will give you a better chance to win than maybe some other player in that 9 or 10 man rotation that maybe you saw the game prior. So it's an understandable question. Many have phrased it as pleasant problem. Rick Carlisle's not having any of that. He wants everyone healthy, and then he's going to have to make the decisions. And that's, one of the reasons he is the coach that he is. He has to make those decisions. But the important thing is, and this staff is really good, not just Rick, but the assistants and the basketball development folks, they'll be talking with Jarris. They'll be working with him. And if there's a game that he doesn't play very much, you might be needed. And as much as you want them to have a clean injury report over the final 2 to 3 months, there are going to be guys out. And he can play so many different positions that if anybody's out, he can step in, I feel like, and contribute. So it would be understandable for him to be just a little bit frustrated, but I hope he sees the big picture and knows he's still a big part of this team, and he has a good future in the league. And maybe if he has a couple of weeks where he doesn't play as much as he would like, it would just motivate him that much more.
Is it going to be similar to, and I guess it wouldn't be because they realized that immediately with TJ McConnell, but is it going to be similar to McConnell to where it's going to have to be something that's going to have to hit you over the head where you can't take him out of the rotation? Because we thought that last year, Rick Carlisle I thought he prepared everybody for the lack of minutes from McConnell and then realized, holy crap, we need him. Is there any chance that this realization could spring forward regarding Jarris Walker?
It could. At any level, your play does the talking. So if you're not playing as much as you would like and you go out there and you're the best player on the court, you'd have to be crazy as a coach to not analyze that and say, well, this guy is earning extra playing time. So maybe that's what happens. I tend to think, at least for the next week or two, this is just me talking, it's going to be a little bit matchup based, and you'll look at who the other team is using off the bench, and then you'll also say, if there's somebody in that starting group on the wing that's giving us problems, and right now Aaron Nesmith, with him being back, he may be your primary wing defender, but I think Jarris Walker can really guard players like that. So his defense is probably, to me, the thing that allows him to maybe get more playing time on a night-to-night basis, but you also are confident with his shooting. I mean, there's been nights where he hasn't played a lot and he steps in and he hits a huge shot late third, early fourth quarter that impacts winning. So I think there's way more confidence in him than there probably ever has been. It's a victim right now of circumstance. And if he plays to the top level, then he probably stays on the court, and then it's someone else that you're worried about maybe not playing as much. So, again, it is what it is. They all understand the situation. There is going to be an odd man out, at least one right now, if everyone's healthy. It's
Jeremiah Johnson here of, I want to say, the old network, but FanDuel Sports Network. We just call it Pacers TV. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I for the life of me, do not understand, other than, I guess, contractually. To me, it is cut and dry how much this team needs Miles Turner. And really, I think Miles could translate in a lot of other places if he were to go there. But I think he's most comfortable here. And why there's any trade discussion really is stupid to me. Like, I'll give you a great example. I just saw it. We have an article that's up on our Facebook page that says trading Miles Turner makes 0 sense for the Pacers. Of course, you know my feeling on this. And then some numbnuts, Daryl Patrick from Plainfield, says what? They should get a ham sandwich if they can. I'm curious. I understand people are stupid, and you're never going to squeeze all the stupid out of some of these people. Why can't you recognize what you have and what is necessary and understand it? Why would you even want to jack around with this is beyond me. I know the Pacers are much smarter than this clown in Plainfield, but I'm just curious, why would you even bring that up, knowing what you know about this team and who they are?
Yeah, you've already given him too much of a platform, I think. And
no, he may get some more in just a little bit because he's a huge dumbass.
Well, one of the things we've seen over the last few years, and really maybe it coincided with Tyrese Halliburton joining the Pacers, and maybe it went back a little bit before that when that was it, because the Domantas Sabonis trade opened up an opportunity for him to play his natural position on both ends of the floor, and he's really thrived being that pick and pop / pick and roll at times player alongside Tyrese Halliburton. But to your original point, and I think it's a valid one, I was on Sirius XM NBA radio on Sunday, and they weren't necessarily advocating for any trade, but they were bringing up the past and how many times Miles Turner was a part of trade discussions, and then even that it was starting to trickle out again right now. I think so many of those articles are written with other teams in mind. And so nobody really nationally writes an article saying what the Pacers should do. They just see Pacers players with contracts that are a certain amount of money, players with a certain skill set, and they say, well, this guy would be perfect on, high-profile team on the West Coast or East Coast here. And then they just figure out, okay, what's a similar salary player that will make, the deal work from a CBA perspective, and we'll send that person or those people to the Pacers for Miles Turner, and there's a possible deal. I don't give a lot of that much credence. It is what it is. The one thing that's probably a little bit different is his unique contract right now, in that he's in the final year of a deal. There probably is some expectation of an amount of money he would like next year, and the cap is a real issue for next season. But I think that, especially with how they played over the last month, you're going to just put everything you've got into this season and this group and let them see what they can continue to do. They're 15-5 in their last 20 games. They're 25-20. They're in prime spot right now to, at minimum, be a 4-5 seed. I mean, with a long way still to go, and there's not that much space between 4 and 9 right now. But I don't see them doing anything that's going to jeopardize this season. And then you get to the off season and you see where things are. But I know how much Miles Turner means to the team on both ends. I know how much he's grown. I know the value he has to this team. And a lot of the people that write those articles, they just don't understand. You've been from day one, so if anyone else has a problem, I think you can have the discussion with them.
Do you think, has anybody ever asked him what he wants out of his next deal at all? I'm not suggesting you do it or anybody. I mean, maybe it's still too early, but I don't know. I know people offer up what they believe his market value to be. And some believe he's only good here. And for the life of me, JJ, I go, what do these people watch? Seriously, have you watched how the big man plays in this era of the NBA? I mean, are they watching the 1990s or the 1980s? To where, yes, that's how you would describe probably his value as a big man then, but now this is completely different. I think he's got value with a lot of other teams as a spot-up three-point shooting big man. Is what Pascal Siakam, his teammate, described him. One of the reasons why he was excited about coming here was to have, that influence on the offensive end. I'm just I'm curious what people actually see here and what he might want out of all this moving forward and what role that may play.
I've not heard any direct questions to Miles this season about, that next contract. And part of it is, whether for good or bad, the Pacers' hands being tied. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if at least There have been some discussions behind closed doors about the future and what he might want. But I think both sides have probably understood because nothing can happen, it doesn't really do any good to have those discussions until the season ends. And the season and how it does end will probably set a lot of the decision-making up for the future. So we'll see what happens with that. You know, I was listening to another podcast this morning, and they were talking about teams needing centers, and they mentioned Vucevic from the Bulls and Valanciunas, and maybe some of the people who, you know, don't see Miles Turner's value. They see guys like that with their rebounds and points and what they provide. But the point that was brought up on that was Brian Windhurst and the Hoop Collective, was those guys don't play any defense. You can't put them out there, Valanciunas and Vucevic, and switch. And Miles Turner, the shot blocking is one thing, but the fact that he can get out there and help you switch a little bit and have some defensive versatility. Now, you don't want to put him on an island, you know, against a point guard, but you don't any center. But when you've got some of these other guys that maybe are more traditional centers, they can't do that at all. And so the things that Miles Turner does above average, the entire skill set, to me, is another reason why I really value what he does. You know, and also just the institutional knowledge. To me, the time he spent with his organization and now 2 or 3 years with this core group of players and how much they all seem to get along well with each other, I'd be hard-pressed to mess that up.
It's just, I think it's a silly proposition. I just don't know. $30 million per, the cap's going to go up. From Bobby Marks to others that are often on this show, they explain to me that that's something that should be doable. I don't know why you don't maintain that. So
yeah, I think in January it's hard to get hung up on a number like that. There are different things they can do. We saw, you know, the current deal that he's on right now. They took advantage of an opportunity where they had some cap space, and he got a lump sum money there in that first year, and then the per year amount that he's making right now is one of the reasons they were able to get Pascal Siakam in the mix, and even with Tyrese Halliburton's super max number. So I trust that they can do something to work it out, and if the two sides are interested in maintaining this relationship after this season, which I have no reason to think they won't, then I feel like they can work something out. But again, it's probably one of those things that's it's good for talk radio. It makes sense on some of the trade deadline media, whether it's in print or on podcast form. It makes sense for people to talk about because, let's be honest, if you put him on some of these teams that are struggling or need a center, he would really help them. But you know who else he would help? He'll help the Pacers. And so I don't see anything like that happening right now.
So is Isaiah Stewart, is he like waiting downtown at the field house for Wednesday, you think? I kind of described it as hiding under the porch at the field house until the Pacers-Pistons play on Wednesday. You think that accurately describes the situation we last saw in Detroit that may have a carryover Wednesday night at the field house?
Well, I just saw in the last week he get into it, was it not with the Orlando Magic, and then his coach, JB Bickerstaff, was ejected. So I'm starting to wonder if this is even a Pacers-Pistons thing, or maybe it's just a Detroit problem, or maybe that's how they've determined they're going to get back into the relevance of the NBA is win more, obviously, but have that bad boys sort of model of play. And you're right, Isaiah Stewart, he's not getting big numbers anymore, even extensive playing time, but he's trying to impact the game in one way or the other. I will say from a schedule perspective, I'm excited and glad that this is the matchup after the Paris trip because everyone talks about, you know, whether it's jet lag or anything else and the letdown after a trip like that. I don't see any letdown from the Pacers. And Detroit's also, I believe, on the end of a 5-game road trip. So they may have their own fatigue issues, but I expect both teams to bring every ounce of intensity. There's no love lost between these two teams. I'm not going to put Pacers-Pistons right now at the top of the Indiana rivals list. I'm going to maintain that right now Milwaukee is still the team that feels like the most intense rivalry, and then maybe now I'll go tie Knicks and Pistons, although the Knicks is more historical. I don't think that those players have disdain for each other. I think there is a little bit of disdain right now between the Pacers and Pistons. And, you know, I mentioned Bickerstaff. The things he said after the game, I say you play that in the locker room before the Pacers game on Wednesday night, just to fire everybody else up. Maybe put it on the big screen.
I may be alone on this, but I'm kind of hoping that the Bucks trade Middleton, because I think that for the postseason would be a bad move. So I'm kind of hoping for that, and I'm hoping that Thibodeau runs his group, his starting group, his main players into the ground, which I think he's done a little bit here to this point. There's some things I'm hoping around the Eastern Conference that may end up occurring that I think will benefit the Pacers long term.
I'll tell you what, just thinking about those potential matchups and being able to go into February, March, and April where you're watching the standings and you're paying attention to the status of those teams, it gets me excited again. You know, November, December, early December, it wasn't a great time. I'm really impressed by how the Pacers have sort of turned everything around. They've gotten healthy, and they're playing with a little bit of that confidence and that swagger, and they're smiling and they're having fun. And again, like you said, I think all those teams have some issues, and even Cleveland to some extent. I mean, they're no way as good as they were early. I still think they're really, really good. But that blistering start, they've come back a little bit, and the Celtics have shown some vulnerability. So the Eastern Conference playoffs, get your popcorn. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
So JJ's got you here. Tomorrow, Pacers, check that. Wednesday, Pacers TV. I just hope that they have their legs and there's no France hangover on Wednesday. So I was more concerned about that than I was that game Thursday initially. So.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It is a kind schedule out of the break in that you had the couple of days to get acclimated, and then Wednesday, then 2 days off before a Saturday late afternoon game against the Hawks, and then you'll head west to a Western Conference road trip that won't be easy, but there have been more challenging Western Conference trips when you've got Jazz, Blazers, Lakers, Clippers. So really the schedule before the All-Star break, again, it presents an opportunity if you can avoid the letdown, the hangover, if you will, after Paris, and you can really go into the break strong. You have an opportunity, really, by the All-Star break to be top four, and who would have thought that the first week of December?
JJ's got you. Pacers TV coming up on Wednesday. We'll be live at Tom's Watch Bar before. You ought to slide by to the live show before you head downtown on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility.
Why don't
I'm
you?
just excited to get back on a regular routine. The last couple of weeks, it's been not enough nights with Pacers basketball, so I'm glad that we'll be back going again, and I'll definitely stop by one of your remotes at some point moving forward.
You got it, JJ. Appreciate you.
All right, take care.
Jeremiah Johnson, Pacers TV. Lance McAllister, 700 WLW a little bit earlier, and Stephen Holder of ESPN. 5 o'clock hour. Going to be a busy week for you. I shall explain. We'll get back into it. I've got concert tickets for you to give away as well, and a lot more. Don't go anywhere unless you want to motivate to 239-1070. We got some call opportunities on the other side. The stream, the app, HD Radio, AAA membership lounge via YouTube Live at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
And the beat goes on. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
James over there, I'm John. Simple Minds, soft sell, and modern English. I've never seen Jim Kerr in Simple Minds. Going to be a chance in June. I think June the 22nd is the date. That's on a Sunday coming up at Ruoff Music Center. I've got tickets all week long for you. I am going to be attending that. Now, shout out to my man Ryan Nally. Nally reached out to me earlier today from Joe's Grill and said, hey, man, you're coming with us. And I said, absolutely. I've never seen Simple Minds. I'm a huge Simple Minds fan. And Soft Cell, I don't know when they've been around here. I think they do a lot of shows, much like Jim Kerr and Simple Minds in Europe, but not too much around here. Impressive. Nice, impressive run in shows being announced here recently as well. All right, 239-1070. Stephen Holder's going to join us coming up at the top of the hour. Tom's Watch Bar Wednesday before the Pacers and the Pistons. I would love to see you there. And our Tavern Tour stop with Heaven Hill Distillery is on Friday. We are going to be at Workingman's Friend on Friday. And then I'm going to head down to Brown County Music Center and watch Yacht Rock Review, I think. Check out a little IU Purdue, Yacht Rock Review. We discussed IU this weekend a little bit earlier. By the way, this is a response that you want. If you watch Michigan and Purdue on Friday, Purdue was very second half disappointing Tuesday night, their home loss against Ohio State. All that goodwill, that strong basketball that was played out west the week prior in the second half went down the tubes a little bit. But the response on Friday against Michigan is exactly what you're looking for, and that's what they gave. That is a professional grade response to not at all liking and not wanting that memory to last of Tuesday night in the second half against Ohio State. And they absolutely shred Michigan. Meantime, yesterday we discussed IU and their situation. There's some similarities to be had with that of Colts football, with just knowing what we know. This is part of it, too. And I heard the same thing regarding Colts football oftentimes this season. It is from Greg. I used to plan my life around IU basketball games. I didn't even know the last two games were played until I saw the score on my phone. And it is out of sight, out of mind for a lot of folks. And when you compound that with just an overall dull / mediocre to losing product, listen, we sit here today knowing what we know. I said the same thing about Colts football. We sit here today and they've decided to go ahead and grind this bad boy out again. Now, this wasn't the first time I said that regarding the general manager. This is what we know. And this is what we know about IU basketball. If you think somebody's going to wave a magic wand and all of a sudden things are going to get better, things are going to improve, I would ask you not to hold your breath. And I have said this before. I think that they have talented guys, but they have talented guys that don't play well at all whatsoever. And the guy that, along with his staff, that has been enabled to put them together evidently cannot do it. And you just see it in stuff that you would think would just be fundamentally sound. Just simple recognition. Hey, that guy's a shooter. And even if that guy's not a shooter, that guy's a shooter right now. So you got to try to take him out of his game. That guy can knock down the three, so let's not go under the screen. I'm just talking about these simple, fundamental approaches that have consistently been lost on this team. And I thought yesterday was a great example of that. Lack of recognition, fundamentally unsound, and discombobulated. All three things and descriptions of which you would not want to be used about your basketball team. And you are far too deep into the season, into the regime of this group to be looking like that at home. I mean, hell, you can argue the same thing about Northwestern. Ty Berry, 3. Ty Berry, 3. Let's go under the screen. A lot of you that know basketball well, that coach basketball, probably watch that and go, what in the hell is happening here? 3 things you don't want. And then you add in what I just read from Greg as far as out of sight, out of mind. And I know that you get worn out on it. But it is the way that it is until it finally changes for the better. But man, those are, to me, very close in proximity and descriptions about both products right now. This is from Brad. Look at this embarrassment on Sunday. Student section is completely checked out. This is right at tip-off. Now we'll say this. I saw, I don't know what pictures are before or when the students come in or anything like that, but I'm talking about, in this case, I'm talking about an older fan that's been a fan forever, that's an IU grad that loves IU basketball, that just simply put doesn't know when they play. And somebody that is completely checked out on the product. That's who they are. And just like I explained with the Colts, until we have some evidence to the contrary, that's who they are. And the same holds true with IU basketball. And we're talking about a variety of reasons, some of which I already mentioned, some of which I have yet to mention, I'm sure. I mean, as much money that was spent in NIL to bring these guys in, you know that they're going to have some talent. I think these guys have some talent. It's weird. Like Miles Rice, he defers more often than not. And then yesterday he's shooting threes and knocking down threes. Yeah, most of the time he doesn't look for that shot. And Carlisle, as much as, you know, he wants to like make shots, he can't make a damn thing. And Mbako at times seems to give you the thought that he has a high level of talent, but then at other times you go, yeah, you understand why Duke was okay with him moving on. I mean, they're all, you could say this, they're all hired guns. That's just what college athletics, and especially basketball in this case, is about. They're all hired, brought in to do a job. Mike Woodson told them to foul, but they didn't. It's just discombobulation that you cannot have this deep in the season and this deep into the Woodson tenure. You just can't have it. And again, much like the Colts, I will tell you, it's all right there before us. It just is going to matter how much more you're going to continue down this path to go. Because it seems it's only going to unravel even more. You got a stretch of what? 4 or 5 games coming up? Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State. Among those games. All right, quick break. We'll come back. Stephen Holder's going to join us coming up at the top of the 5 o'clock hour. Do not go anywhere. Simple Minds, Modern English, soft sell tickets to give away, and locations later on this week. Why you hate the Chiefs. I'll get back to that coming up in just a minute, too. More on the Pacers, as well as what was an incredibly fun weekend, I felt. We'll get into that and more coming up. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I saw this from Alex Golden a little bit earlier. Friend of the show from Setting the Pace. The Pacers 8th in the latest NBA power rankings at NBA.com. Overall, they've been the league's 8th most improved defensive team, having allowed 3.9 fewer points per 100 possessions than they did last season. They've seen the second biggest drop in opponent free throw rate. Now, I'm assuming that's probably league-wide because it just doesn't seem like with the whistle this year compared to last year that everybody's going to the free throw line as much. The second biggest jump in defensive rebounding percentage. Quote, a big difference between the two games in Paris, bench minutes, and the Pacers have now won 11 of the last 12 games in which they weren't outscored with Toppin on the floor, with the only exception being a game in which he left early with an ankle injury. The Indiana bench ranks 14th over that stretch, up from 22nd prior. So, a lot of things I didn't think they could drastically improve upon that they have. The thought. Jim McCann of Southern California writes this: can we look forward to a movie being released based on Blake's fun 19th birthday weekend? Hopefully so. Thank you, Jim. Dave writes this: really got tiring listening to all the sports media types today telling us we did not see what we saw in the Bills-Chiefs game. I'm going to say this. Really good teams, and I know that it looks like that they get every call. Really good teams, more oftentimes than not, do. If you are a good team, it's weird how that happens. Do I think there's some big conspiracy going on? Absolutely not. Do I wish that they were so we could talk about it? Absolutely. Do I think the NFL people love the consistent debate? They probably debate two old dudes running in to spot the football in the wrong spot. And why in tennis you can have Hawkeye, but in the NFL you have two old dudes running in, trying to figure out where to spot the ball in a mass of humanity. I just think more times than not, a really good team gets whatever benefit of the doubt there is. And I wish the teams that we followed most often would get to that level to where, much like the Colts were back during the Manning era when everybody hated them, when everybody was sick and tired of hearing about Peyton Manning, hearing about the Colts, watching the Colts. I'm sick and tired. I got to see Peyton Manning all the time. Cut that meat, SNL, big forehead. Those are the days that I want to get back to. Those are the days right now, even at a higher level, in which the Kansas City Chiefs are a part of. So, does it wear you out? Absolutely. Do I think it's a conspiracy theory? Absolutely not. Do I understand it? Yes, because you play at that high level consistently, and again, more times than not, you're going to get the call. And man, the Chiefs get a lot of calls. Hey, that was the catch. Hey, that wasn't a false start. Then you learned some things yesterday about rules. Yeah, the officials can award a score, the NFC title game. Yeah, and Tony Romo mentioned, if it's just a shade over the play clock, if it expires before the game clock, it's okay. They'll let it go. And I know that drives everybody nuts, and I know that it should. But at the same time, Kansas City plays at such a level that I think most of us are just jealous about because they're consistently that good. And when you're consistently that good, you're probably going to get those calls. And again, I don't care. I don't care who wins. I don't care if the Bills lost or won last night. I'm still going to watch the Super Bowl when it's on, even if I don't give a crap about either team. Seems like winning consistently, playing at a high level consistently, get you status like that. Maybe you could argue it shouldn't, but I think we've seen in many cases in the past that it does. Quick break. We'll come back. Simple Minds tickets coming up in the 5 o'clock hour for you. Ruoff, June the 22nd. That is going to be a blast. I should explain. Stephen Holder also still to come. Stay right there. AAA Membership Lounge via YouTube Live at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Oh seven five The Fan.
All right, Simple Minds tickets I have for you. Simple Minds, Soft Cell. The song we taught James is Tainted Love. I also have a song called Sex Dwarf. I've described to James. It was fantastic. And Modern English. They had the one-hit wonder called I Melt With You, James. Did that ring a bell?
Sort of.
No? Kind of?
I think I've heard the name before, but I couldn't tell you what it sounds like now.
Modern English. June the 22nd is the date coming up at Ruoff Music Center. I've got tickets for you. That is going to be a must-see show, especially for those of you that are members of Generation X. I promise you that. Greg did not know who George Young, that reference was. George Young was the character Johnny Depp played in the film Below. George Young. Noted drug trafficker. Way back when.
Is Sex Dwarf a song I could get away with playing on air, or should I?
I think it is. I don't know.
Is it clean? Well, as clean as a song called Sex Dwarf can be.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, just ask for it clean. Will Google give you a clean version of it?
It might.
Tom's Watch Bar Wednesday. I think Hagen's going to make that. Actually, it may not, because I think I told Hagen last night on Fox 59 Overtime that it's Thursday. So 59, check that, I'm sorry. Wednesday, Tom's Watch Bar. And then a tavern tour stop on Friday will find us at Workingman's Friend. Shout out to Becky. I always think about Workingman's Friend because so many times got to hang out with our late, great, good friend, nobody ever will be like one Robin Miller. And his order was always a double cheeseburger plain with no middle bun. And onion rings. Friday, Tavern Tour Stop, Workingman's Friend, Brent Halverson, Heaven Hill Distillery. I promise you a blast. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline from ESPN and ESPN.com, Stephen Holder joins us. So do you think that there's some sort of massive conspiracy that's trying to prop up Kansas City getting every call, winning 3 straight Super Bowls? I wish they were, but unfortunately nobody can keep a secret longer than 5 minutes, so there's no way that would happen.
Yeah, having been in the media for a long time, I know how that works, right? I mean, nothing is secret anymore. And that's where I kind of come down on it. Like, do people know how hard that would be to pull off? I don't know. I do think that it is possible to get the benefit of the doubt. Okay,
especially when you're good at that level consistently.
Oh yeah. You know, I mean, look, I was just talking about an off-air conversation, right, about the Jordan rules. Okay, that was a thing. I don't think it was a conspiracy, but he got the benefit of the doubt a lot. Basketball is always my reference for everything, right? Great players, they always shoot a lot of free throws. You know why? They get a lot of calls. It's just kind of how it goes, man. So I don't know. I don't think it's anything deep seated, but I do think it is possible to get the benefit of the doubt. All right, you are particularly in the playoffs at home when you're talking about Mahomes and his presence. Yes, I think you can get the benefit of the doubt, and that can work in your favor with the officials. That is not the same thing as saying it's a conspiracy, but that's just kind of human nature, I think. I think that's where this starts and ends.
The one thing about the Kansas City Chiefs, Stephen, to me, is Patrick Mahomes, without question. Easy, first, second Hall of Famer right there whenever he is done. But Chris Jones brought this up after the game when asked, what team can beat you? And he said a team that defensively is coached up by Steve Spagnuolo. And I would happen to agree with that because they right now, I don't recognize them defensively as hardcore as they have been, especially in short yardage situations over the course of the year compared to the way that they were dialed in yesterday, for example. It just seems like that they get better and better, and I think you look no further than who is coordinating them defensively as to why they're so good. And I think that that's the big reason beyond just the obvious in Mahomes as to why they have such a high level of success.
Yeah, look, I mean, I thought this season was the season where their offense was the least dominant version we have seen. Okay? And yet here they are, playing for another ring. And that is because their defense just consistently, without fail, showed up. I mean, look at the impact on yesterday's game, which they did give up a lot of points. But, look, you had two high-powered offenses. Maybe that was to be expected. But here's how you win games. Look at the two-point conversion situations, short yardage and things like that. I mean, when you get those stops, the two-point conversion tries, you don't know if those things are going to factor into the final outcome of the game. It turns out those were really important plays, right? So they just consistently find a way. And they were just one of those teams, they find a way to make a play even when they shouldn't. When all odds are against them, they figure out a way and they make a play. And they just do it, man. They finish the job. But sometimes that's the difference. I mean, we can talk about the Colts in this regard, right? The Colts so often this year never made that one play you had to make. The Chiefs make that play almost invariably. And that is the difference between just being just kind of an average team and being a dynasty. I mean, it might just be that simple, okay? Because the great teams do that consistently. And then you have other teams that maybe give themselves a chance, but there's no way they're going to finish it. And that's maybe this local team here.
Yeah, it just seems like consistently you get Spagnuolo and Chris Jones, you get Mahomes and Andy Reid, and then for the most part, obviously Kelsey's been a part of that over the years too, but for the most part, you just factor in other folks, and they all kind of slide right into their positions and maintain at a very high level.
Yeah, I mean, look, go back to last year, by the way. Okay, last year's Super Bowl against San Francisco, I thought the defense won that game, and then Mahomes finished it. Okay, in overtime, he finished it. He had the ball in his hand, and he was going in, on that game-winning drive. He found a way and converted that fourth down, and you're like, you've got to be kidding me, right? You want to punch a wall if you're a Niners fan at that point. But what I'd say, though, throughout that game, Chris Jones, I mean, he owned that San Francisco front, okay? He dominated those guys. So this is not new. We just talk about Mahomes a lot, but this isn't new. They've been doing this for a little bit. I just think we have more heightened awareness of their defensive dominance now. But man, I'm telling you, man, that defense and Spagnuolo, as you mentioned, I mean, that's going to be as big a reason as anything for them to win this three-peat if they do it.
So Stephen Holder of ESPN, ESPN.com is on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So Lance McAllister of Cincinnati, 700 WLW, does work over there, works with the Bengals as well. And we were talking about the Colts' new defensive coordinator, and he was a big fan, and he's mentioned a lot of what people had mentioned upon the decision to bring Lou Anarumo over was the things and the reasons things fell apart in Cincinnati was more production/player based than it was anything else. So those Colts fans out there that are excited about the proposition, I guess you got to get a little cooperation from Chris Ballard here moving forward. But that was the statements that have been made coming out of Cincinnati regarding the new defensive coordinator of the Colts, Stephen.
Yeah, I do think that there's going to have to be some cooperation from Chris Ballard. I don't think that Lou Anarumo can do this on his own. I think that he ran into the same problem that most coaches run into, right? I mean, your personnel changes over the years, and the production slips, and it just is how it is. That just is what it is. I think that here, I don't think he needs an overhaul. Okay, but I do think there are going to have to be some tweaks, and I think the secondary is where I'd start. That front, I think most of those guys, you can run it back with most of those guys. I'm not saying don't add. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying they can play this scheme. You always want to add talent, so that's just a given, okay, just to be clear. But we're just talking about the existing roster, who fits and who doesn't. I think the front, I think you can make that. Those guys can make it work. Linebackers, you're going to have to make some decisions there. I think it's workable. I think Zaire Franklin can play in this scheme. We'll have to see what happens with the rest of those guys. But in the secondary, for me, I think you need more playmakers. I think in the previous system, they were very much content to use sort of system guys to a degree, and they drafted a very specific type of defensive back. I think now you need more of a playmaker in this system. And so I'm interested to see if they prioritize that. I just look at this past draft, for example. So we do a redraft at ESPN every year, and we just did it recently. It hasn't come out yet. It'll come out in a week or two. I don't know. But we were going through the list there, and, I thought about Quinyon Mitchell and that opportunity the Colts had to pick him. I don't have a problem with the Latu pick. I don't. But I'm just saying, you wonder, how would it have worked differently if they had that playmaker in the secondary like that? Look how that guy's played in Philly. Look how he's played. So I just think if you prioritize that, you can get that done here this offseason. But it's got to be a priority on the back end, and it has not been for Chris Ballard in a very long time.
What's the focus priority-wise, positionally speaking? Is it – because Lance had mentioned Jesse Bates. You had mentioned him before as well. DJ Reader, somebody else that they had lost via free agency that they simply put production-wise could not replace. So where do you start positionally speaking to put this together in a form and a fashion in which it's much more formidable and what the new DC wants?
Well, look, I would start at corner for me. Excuse me. And here's why. I was just putting together a story. I think it'll run this week, maybe tomorrow. But here's the thing. One of the things that I came across in working on this is I went through the coverage rates. Okay, and what I mean by that is what percentage of the time did they play what type of coverage? All right, check this out. The Colts last season, they played zone coverage 31% of the time. They played, man coverage 31% of the time. Zone coverage 68% of the time, okay? Now, that's going to change. Last year with Cincinnati, they were in man almost 44% of the time, all right? And that's compared to 31% with the Colts. And I think if he had different players, that number might even be higher. It has been higher in the past for Anarumo. So they were in zone about just a little more than half the time on dropbacks by the opposing quarterback. So you're going to see a much more aggressive approach where you're going to have guys go match up. I think that's what he'll want to do. You got to have talent to do that. I'm not saying the Colts don't do that ever. They don't. I mean, they do. They just do it about 30% of the time. And again, that number should go up this year. And you're going to have guys who can go out there and compete, man. Go out there and fight. And I think that's going to take a different type of defensive back.
You think a trade in this capacity is a possibility here as far as trying to get better?
Sure, for sure. I don't know who it would be. I'd have to look a little closer and come up with some scenarios. But I go back to something I mentioned on the show last week, which is that is one of the tools they utilized when they hired Gus Bradley. They made that trade with Rock Ya-Sin because I presume Gus Bradley maybe didn't see him as a fit, and they went and got Yannick Ngakoue, who was definitely a fit, okay, and did have some impact that year. So there are ways to do it. It doesn't all have to be free agency. So if you have guys who maybe are decent players but maybe aren't great fits, that's what I'd look to do. I would look to see if you can get some value for them. And so we'll just have to see who they are and how it shakes out. I don't know names yet, but that is a possibility for sure.
It's Stephen Holder on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So among the names that you would expect to maintain, defensively speaking, I know we have one in already. Anybody else you think that may end up staying that was here with Gus Bradley?
Right. I'm not quite sure yet. I think it'll be interesting. I think the defensive line coach for me is that decision is really interesting. You can't say that was a good decision, okay, to make that change last year. So I would be probably surprised if they stayed put there with Charlie Partridge. And I've probably said this on the phone, on this call on the station before, but I think it bears repeating. That went backwards. That completely blew up in their face. They made a change, at the defensive line coach from Nate Ollie 2 years ago. You might remember they had the Indianapolis era record for sacks. Remember that? And yet it didn't feel like maybe they had enough pressure, right? There was some sentiment about that. And so the way it was explained to me was that I think the idea there was, well, Gus Bradley said, well, we got to create more pressure. So they went out and made a change there, and that backfired, okay? Nate Ollie goes to Houston. They're rushing the passer like crazy, doing all the things that they did this year. Charlie Partridge comes in, first-time NFL coach after 2 decades in the college game. What happens to the Colts pass rush? Huge step backwards, right? So anyway,
so they are keeping Partridge, though, right?
I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll see. I would have questions if they do, but I don't know. Maybe his philosophy fits with what Anarumo wants to do. I don't know. We'll see. But I have questions about that, if that ends up being the case.
Yeah, obviously we kind of view both Buckner, for one, we'll start with him, defensively up front as essential pieces that, regardless of who we're talking about, would give you production. Who do you think with this change defensively and philosophy has the biggest opportunity to make the largest leap in this case from this past year to this year upcoming?
On the defensive line, did you say?
You know what? You can go defensive line. You can go the entire defense if you want, but I want to start with the defensive line. Yeah, because there are so many names, so many high draft picks and a deal and all that there. You would think that maybe one of those guys, if they're kept, could substantially make a jump compared to what we just talked about last year.
Yeah, well, I'll go back to Latu. I know I just mentioned him in a different context, but I think there's so much more. There's so much more on the bone there, and I think that look, the guy's skill set is unbelievable, and I think the game was a little fast for him at times, and maybe he was a step too slow in some opportunities. I mean, he could have had much different numbers than he ended up with. He was like all world for just missed sacks. I mean, I'm sure a lot of guys probably feel they fit that, but all I can tell you is I really think you see the skill set, you see the ability. Now I think they have to find a way, and Rumo has to find a way to really feature that guy and really get him to that next level. He's done it with a couple of pass rushers and gotten career years out of them in Cincinnati. Okay, so there's precedent there. I'm interested to see if he can do it. I'm interested to see that. I have high hopes for that guy still. And frankly, let's be clear now. Latu had a very good season. I know that doesn't sound right on the surface, but among rookie pass rushers, he was probably 2 or 3 among rookie pass rushers in production this year. He had Jared Verse in Los Angeles. He made the Pro Bowl. Fantastic season. Look, that's a high bar, but I'm telling you, Latu, he was right there. He is going to be a good player. I'm convinced of it. So let's see if he can get him to the next level.
Do you think there's ever going to be a point in time when we call somebody having a good season for the Colts and they actually produce and show it and we can see it with our eyeballs?
Let's hope we can be right for once in a while, right?
And I'm sure you're the same way. Mm-hmm. Aren't we kind of tired of hearing about how good somebody was, even though they really didn't produce and show it? And we have to hear about what we're missing. And when we watch the tape, it really had no consequences whatsoever. Isn't that what we're looking for?
No, that's fair. That's fair. And that's why though, it has to be across the board. I mean, everybody has to raise their level. It's not enough for a guy here and a guy there to be really good. You got to have elite play from a lot of guys if you want it to really matter. Look at Cincinnati. I mean, they had Trey Hendrickson. This guy had a gazillion sacks, and they have nothing to show for it, right? Because they didn't have any other contributors, not enough at least. And so that's what ends up happening. So you got to have those contributions across the board, man. It ain't enough for it to be sporadic. And then look no further than DeForest Buckner. I mean, no one would say that he had an underwhelming season. He had a great season, of course, right? But is there any obvious evidence of that when you look at the team? No. And that's because in my, sort of layman's opinion, I don't think the guys around him did enough. So anyway, I agree with you. It's got to be a all 11 effort, man.
Left side of the offensive line going to look relatively the same, right? I would assume, but the right side. Where are we going with the right side? Is center on down the line here? What are we thinking off season wise?
Well, the first thing they've got to figure out is what is the status of Braden Smith. I do not know that answer. I've not heard an update there. We all know that he was dealing with some sort of a personal issue, personal matter. They put him on the non-football injury list. I mean, that suggests a few things. I won't speculate. But anyway, he's got one more year on his contract, and I'm looking at it now. His cap number is supposed to be $19 million next year. Now, if you cut Braden Smith, I'm not suggesting they will or will not. If you cut Braden Smith, you're saving almost $17 million in cap. It's a lot of money. And I don't know what's going on with him, but I will say he played decent in spite of what I think is maybe a pretty chronic knee issue that he's had for a while. So I just don't know if you move forward at $19 million, but I don't have all the information, so I really can't say what the deal is. All I'm saying is, just based on what we know, it's a lot of money to swallow for a guy who's kind of had a knee issue, and now his status clearly is up in the air at best. So they got to figure that out. You mentioned the right side. I mean, frankly, right guard is no more of a certainty either. Will Fries was having a good year until he had that devastating leg injury. And his rehab is much longer than I think people even realize. When we spoke to him when the Colts were doing their exit interviews, so a couple of weeks ago, he was still well into the rehab, and he said he had a long way to go. So I don't know what to think about that one. And it's sad because he was having a great year, and he was in line to get a pretty nice extension. And when he left the lineup, the absence was evident, right? It was felt. So there, and then obviously center is the next question. Do they move on from Ryan Kelly? I mean, perhaps, probably, I guess. And then we'll have to figure out whether they're comfortable with their next solution there, with the rookie coming back. So, yeah, a lot of this is probably the most questions we've had on the Colts offensive line in a long time. And they should not be just sort of overlooked. This is a big deal because that offensive line has been steady for them for a long time with some bumps in the road for sure, but mostly steady for the last, 6 years. Well, it's going to change possibly a lot.
So Stephen Holder of ESPN and ESPN.com is on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So we get the week after next, obviously, the Super Bowl, and then inbound the NFL Combine. I'm assuming we kind of know, right, the category in which we should be talking about once that is officially underway. What we're going to be watching, what we should be focused in on, correct?
In terms of the Combine?
Yeah,
draft?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, there's a few. I mean, certainly I already talked about the back end of the defense. I think you got to go get a guy. Like, take it seriously, okay? Take it seriously. And it's great if you can go get a Sam Womack off waivers, after roster cuts. Okay, that's great. That's cute. Now go get a guy. Like, and no offense to him, I'm saying, look, there's higher end talent, and he was a good solution at that time. But like, that's not the way you go about this, man. I mean, that's not the way you go about filling one of the most important positions on your team, in my estimation. So I would say that's where I'd start. And then I think wide receivers interesting. I don't necessarily think they have pressure to go do something there. Obviously, tight end maybe is an equal priority, if not bigger. But I also think that tight ends outside of the very, very elite guys, you don't have to use, that first round pick or even the second. So So we'll see. But, wide receiver, I'll be interested to hear what their assessment is of that position, and what they think about the long term. Alec Pierce is going to be in a contract year. Do they anticipate trying to re-sign him, and what does that cost? Or do they think about the future there? I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. I don't think a lot of pressure to make a move, but it is an interesting conversation. And then much, much later in the draft, for the love of God, get a running back, please. Please.
No more Trey Sermon around here? Is that what you're advocating?
Look, man, I mean, Jonathan Taylor, I think he's fine. I'm not trading Jonathan Taylor. I know people have differing opinions on him, and some of it, some people are still pissed about the holdout. Okay, fine, whatever. Me, I'm keeping him. However, we can acknowledge that he gets banged up, okay? And he has had to carry the ball a lot. Get him some real help, particularly or preferably someone who can catch the ball out of the backfield reliably, which he can't do, not reliably. And so I think you need a better tandem back there. You need a good tandem. That's something I think they should prioritize. Doesn't have to be early, but in the middle rounds, that should be a very important conversation they're having.
It's Stephen Holder of ESPN and ESPN.com is on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. A lot of work to be done. There's no doubt about that. I was thinking watching both games yesterday, I try to view the Colts in terms of what would they look like in these situations, because the hypotheticals all we have to go on, obviously, and have for the past 4 years, and division title-wise the past 10 years. And honestly, there are very few situations I'm thinking about the Colts being able to get through, positionally speaking, or either side of the football in these two games from yesterday. That's just how far off the pace I deem them to be right now. Fair or unfair, that's kind of how I view it.
No, I mean, they're in a different class. Those teams are in a different class. I don't think there's any – I don't think anybody takes any issue with that statement. And they are going to have to figure out a way to close that gap, and the reality is it's hard to do it if you're not great at quarterback. So that's the obvious. That's the Captain Obvious, answer. But it's more than that. Okay, we just talked about that Kansas City defense. Okay, I don't know if they have a lesser defense. I don't know that they're in the AFC Championship game.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
I really don't. Mahomes or no Mahomes, as great as he is, this was, I thought, the least lethal defense they had. I'm sorry, offense. Least lethal offense the Chiefs have had in Mahomes' era. So I say all that to say, you got to build the team, man. People got to fear you. They got to be afraid of your defense. Okay? And they got to be afraid of guys outside of the quarterback, too. The quarterback would help, but look, that alone isn't going to be enough. Where's Joe Burrow sitting right now? All right? So it's about the whole team, man. It really is.
Stephen Holder on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Always a pleasure. We'll stay at it, see what goes down, and then obviously combine-wise, be talking a lot about that. After that, it'll be free agency, and we'll be right back to it again. I appreciate you as always, man. Thank you.
All right, man. See you soon, brother.
Stephen Holder of ESPN. Yeah, no, you just end up coming up with more questions than answers when you're trying to compare this product to the ones that we witnessed yesterday. Fair or unfair? Quick one, we'll come back. Concert tickets for you, too. Road shows this week as well. Some hoops conversation coming up on the other side. And at 239-1070, if you guys want to jump on board, I'll talk with you. The final 30 minutes of this show on a Monday. It's 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
out the goal! 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, so we have SmackDown on Friday and the Royal Rumble on Saturday. WWE, do we have any guests for WWE? Who are the people that would be on? Because I remember we've had the Big Show in here before.
Mm-hmm.
Sheamus has been on with me before. Who was The Miz? I sat upstairs once upon a time with The Miz on the show before.
He's a wrestler. He's been in the company for a really long time now. He's actually one of the more longer tenured wrestlers at this point.
Okay. So are they going to be a part of are they all going to be? No, Big Show's gone now.
Big Show is not in WWE
he's not
anymore.
gone, but he's
not in WWE anymore.
Right.
Let me look this up. Let me see if they have because the thing about the Rumble is they don't tell you who's going to be, like, they don't tell you everyone who's going to be in it.
Okay.
Because a big draw of it is you get the opportunity to bring back all of these older wrestlers who maybe haven't been there for a while. They can come in, do a quick surprise entrance. Everyone cheers. They get to be a part of the match without actually having to carry a whole match for however long it is. So you see a lot of older wrestlers or wrestlers who haven't been around coming back for a little brief moment.
Bam Bam Bigelow is no longer with us, right?
I don't think he is.
Bam
Bam Bigelow passed in 2007.
Is Rick Rude? Is that Ravishing Rick Rude is no longer with us either, right?
Rick Rude passed in 1999.
Wow, man. Is Brother Love one of the managers? Remember Brother Love?
I do remember Brother Love. Did he start with The Undertaker? I think he was the guy who debuted with The Undertaker. He's still around.
Is your favorite tag team of all time the Bushwhackers?
No, I will not. It's not the Bushwhackers.
Who is it?
Favorite tag team?
Yeah.
Oh, what was going on with my mic? Favorite tag team? Probably the Hardy Boys.
Not the British Bulldogs?
No.
Not Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov? I know the Iron Sheik's no longer with us.
He's no longer with us,
right?
but I do have to say, I love the Iron Sheik, and I love his hatred for Hulk Hogan.
Do you like Hulk Hogan?
No.
Will we play Real American later on this week with he and Rick Derringer from the WWF album of the 1980s?
I've played Real American coming back in before.
I played that on the JMV Takeover before, too. Dino Bravo.
You're naming guys I haven't even heard of.
Oh, some good stuff right there. When we need it, we're going to go to James for all our wrestling knowledge. SmackDown Friday at Cambridge Fieldhouse, right?
Yep.
And then Saturday night.
It's the Royal
And
Rumble.
I want to thank the Pacers for the Halliburton bobblehead. The wrestling bobbleheads down the hall. I got to go get that, don't I? I didn't bring it in here.
I guess you do. I didn't know you got one of those.
Yeah, I'll go remind me during the break, and I'll come back in here and go get it. 239-1070. James will keep us updated on the WWE in town later on this week. And Jared is online, too, joining the show. Hello, Jared. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you doing?
You got it. Jared, I'm fantastic. Thank you for the call. Go ahead.
I appreciate you taking it.
You got it.
My comment is most people don't realize the NFL is sporting entertainment, just like wrestling is. And that means that they are legally allowed to fix any game that they want to without any repercussions. If you look on their LLC, NFL LLC, then you can see that it is sporting entertainment. It's not considered a sport.
So are you suggesting that the NFL is kind of like, or a majority of it is like the WWE?
Everybody realizes that that wrestling is fake. Everybody understands that and accepts that, but they don't realize that the NFL is the exact same way.
Well, there's zero way in the world the NFL wants to be recognized as that. None. And I know I get what you're saying as far as how they're LLC'd and all this, but there's zero way they want to be recognized as that. None.
I'm not a betting person myself. I don't see the point in it, but I know a lot of people are, and the NFL is not the way to go with betting.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's up to you. I mean, I'm not a bettor either, just because I'm not a big fan of losing, and betting a lot means you're going to be losing a lot, and I'm sure as hell not a fan of that. But, yeah, I do know that as far as entertainment, they want to be entertaining, but they want legitimacy at the top of the list. Yes.
Also, in terms of fixing games, I mean, with all the sports betting, doesn't that start to really, I mean, you start running into some potential legal issues with that.
This is a legitimate group. I know that everybody says this is like the WWE, this is just like wrestling, but really, it's not. It's not. Now, again, if you're not good at betting on it, then that's more on you. If you want to bet on it, bet on it. If you don't, don't. But there is zero way that they want to be recognized in anybody's opinion with a description like that. I'll promise you. Mike's in Brooklyn, New York on line 4 at 239-1070. Hello, Mike.
JMV, what's up?
Mike?
Yeah.
Hanging with you today, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah, man. I was listening to you and thinking about the phase one of this off season, and the way I look at it is Ballard's modus operandi right now should be purging.
I got to look up what that is. I don't even know. You're talking to somebody that's not very bright, Mike. So
no, not at all. Purge the roster. I mean, when you looking at those, like you cannot commit any big money to any of those players that are free, and also you have to start trimming the fat, like Braden Smiths and Raekwon Davises and all those guys. These guys, I mean, even you look at guys like Buckner and Grover Stewart. I mean, you just pointed out these guys are getting older. Kenny Moore. I mean, can you absolutely count on these guys to keep up the production that they've had?
I will say this: I believe in Kenny Moore. There are others that I completely agree with you on. I believe in Kenny Moore continuing.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically Kenny Moore and Buckner are the only guys who have exhibited any kind of leadership, on this team. And I think that when you're talking about changing cultures, have you ever seen the NFL Films interview with Bart Starr talking about when Vince Lombardi got to the Packers?
Right.
And he pretty much said he was there for 3 years, and they couldn't figure out how they couldn't win. And
it's funny, Mike. I wish we were talking about such a change for circumstances for the long haul. I think most people right now would just like take some sort of Band-Aid to stop the losing, which is the bleeding of losing right now. You know what I mean? So I know I'm right there with you. You're sick and tired of taking baby steps, and really you moonwalk with baby steps. You go in the wrong direction more times than not. That's why this whole thing has been so messy, and that's why people like me will believe the execution of this so-called process or plan when we see it, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, is Ballard, that's the thing, is Ballard going to change? And because he's so loyal to these players. I mean, it's one thing to be Bill Polian and you have a homegrown team, which I like, but when you're re-signing guys like, Reggie Wayne and, Antoine Bethea and Dallas Clark, and you're extending them, but they deserved it. But the guys that he's hanging his hat on, these guys, these are probably not guys that you should have been extended. Guys like Zaire Franklin. I mean, to me, a guy like him, if that guy is the leader of your team, then you really don't have a leader, okay? Because, I mean, even from the locker room, what Buckner and Kenny Moore were talking about, I mean, that's all directed at him, individuals playing as individuals, guys with egos. So if you want to cut bait with him, my only thing is when you're taking baby steps, you got a guy like Anarumo, and I looked at those games yesterday. This is a guy who has beaten those quarterbacks in a playoff game when the money's on. So I always think that there's going to be a way. There's a way you could figure it out if you're being real.
Well, and the NFL gives you that capacity with the way they structure things to not be bad for a long time, to have a quick turnaround like that. But the Colts
look at Washington. How would we like if we had Jaden Daniels?
Colts have been unable to do that. My man, I appreciate you as always. Call in later on this week, okay?
All right, JMV, take care. Thanks.
Mike in Brooklyn, New York, right there with us. So I evidently got in an argument that somebody at our station didn't like because they took my comments off of Facebook and our page.
What were you arguing?
Who did that? Did Nick do that, or did you do that?
That wasn't me, so it may have been Nick.
You didn't do that?
No.
Somebody did that. I had some really good, like, you're a dumbass comments that got eliminated.
I don't even think I
Who
have.
do I blame? Are they allowed to eliminate
I'm assuming
my
they're
comments?
allowed to. It's their page. I don't even have access to the Facebook page. I don't
Really?
think. Yeah.
Yeah, me and this that dude I mentioned to JJ a little bit earlier, Daryl in Plainfield, who doesn't know his ass from nothing. And I told him kind of like that. I thought in a very nice way. I explained how there's his ass and there's you over there not knowing anything. And then somebody took it down. Who do I blame for taking my comments down? My commentary has to stand. Can be taken down. It cannot be eliminated. All right, James. Quick break. You sure it wasn't you, James? Because you're
right
acting
hand,
over there like it might be you.
Right hand to God. It was not me.
All right, and you're going to get us both struck by lightning in this room right here if you're not careful. Hey, quick break. We'll come back with you. I've got tickets for you as well all week long, including today, to one of what I think is going to be the better shows coming up this summer at Ruoff. I'll explain, give you a chance to win. That and more coming up next as we'll close it up on this Monday, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. Hey, John, for Daisy Brand Dips, the makers. Daisy, of course. They put together low-fat cottage cheese that I love, I've talked about. And then that transition into them saying, all right, talk about this product for us. Daisy Brand Dips, French onion and ranch. Just in time for the big game. Just in time for your big game party, your festivities, whatever you are doing. If there is a dip on the table, make it Daisy Brand Dips for whatever you're serving. Maybe it's vegetables. Maybe it's corn chips, tortilla chips, or crackers. Daisy Brand Dips, French onion and ranch, absolutely have to be on the table. You can thank me later for it.
The holy hand grenade of Antioch. Right. 1, 2, 5. Freezer. 3.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
This is Sex Dwarf by Soft Cell. Soft Cell, Jim Kerr, Simple Minds, and Modern English. The 22nd of June, Ruoff Music Center. I like this song. Soft Cell, if you remember back in 1981, had the hit, the classic Tainted Love. Number 9 at 239-1070, a pair of tickets for you because we love giving you the opportunity. The opportunity for music, the opportunity for enjoyment, the opportunity for entertainment. Thanks to our friends at Live Nation, as always. I mean, everybody that understands the best place to go for your shows to promote them is this station and this show, because we hit everybody. Not just rock, not just country, not just R&B, everybody. Again, June 22nd, Ruoff Music Center. Simple Minds, Soft Cell, and Modern English. All week long, we have that. Hey, quick shout out to the Pacers for bringing this by a little bit earlier. If you guys are watching via the AAA Membership Lounge, YouTube Live, this would be Tyrese Halliburton in a wrestling ring with a basketball, a big-ass watch, and a wrestling championship belt. This is nice. This represents Pacers WWE night. That's on Wednesday against the Pistons. Of course, you got the exciting week with SmackDown Friday and the Royal Rumble on Saturday. They're going to be joined, James, by WWE Women's Tag Team Champion Bianca, who? What?
Bianca Belair.
Bianca Belair. And WWE superstar Montez Ford.
Oh, awesome.
Do we know them?
I do know both of those people.
What's the smoke show rating of Bianca Belair?
It's up there.
Nice.
I mean, you could honestly say that about pretty much every single one of the women on the women's roster. They're all pretty good looking.
For a limited time, fans can also score a Tyrese Halliburton WWE bobblehead starting at just $20, which includes a bobblehead and a game night ticket. Pacers.com/WWE for this right now. Again, yeah, inside the lounge, you can see it. I think that looks pretty badass right there.
That's cool.
I'm sorry. I was trying to do that. It looked like the crotch. But no, I was actually trying to get to the ring right there. I go, wait a minute. No, that's not the ring. That's not the ring. That is the ring. That's pretty cool. My finger's over the top of it, though. Or as they say from where I'm from, my finger is over the top of it. Tyrese Halliburton, again, this bobblehead. Ticket to the game on Wednesday night, WWE night. You can get those right now, Pacers.com/WWE. And thank you, Pacers, for that. 239-1070 is the number. Hey, get Fulton on here. He had a basketball game. Fulton, you got to go quick.
Hey, how are you, John?
I'm great, Fulton. You had a basketball game, I hear.
Yes, I did.
Tell me about it.
Well, we won. We lost our first game, and we won our second game.
You did? How many points you score, Fulton? The winning and losing stuff, who cares? What did you do? How good you
I made 10 basketball shots.
You did? 10 basketball shots? You made more than I did yesterday in Southport Fieldhouse pickup.
10 rebounds and 10 passes.
10? Wait a minute. 10? You passed the ball. Hey, Fulton, take it from somebody that knows this to be true. If you pass the ball 10 times, you're passing it way too much. We got to have more shooting, okay?
Yeah, I know.
You're passing it way too much. Yeah, you pass it way too much. All right, there's no need to share out there. Make sure you go out there and get yours.
Yep, and I did hear that Earth, Wind, and Fire is going to be a improvised amphitheater.
Now, do you think we can get them to bring you up on stage with your ukulele and play September with them?
I think so.
All right, buddy. Thank you, Fulton.
And make sure you come to my game on Friday.
All right, Fulton. Thank you very much, buddy. I appreciate that. 10 passes? He said he passed 10. Oh, man.
He had a triple-double.
I thought I have taught him better than that. 10 passes, that's too much.
10 passes, 10 shots, and 10 rebounds.
Hey, Bill and Patrick, you guys are up first tomorrow when you call in the show, I promise. I'm sorry I leave you on hold. Hey, Tom's Watch Bar before the Pacer game on Wednesday downtown on Illinois. Tavern Tour Stop, Heaven Hill Distillery, Brent Halverson, me Friday, the Workingman's Friend. Cannot wait for that. James, great job out of you. Lance McAllister, JJ, Stephen Holder, podcast 1075thefan.com. Tyrese Halliburton, Pacers.com. Get yours now.